Oh, frith on the hills to the hills. To quote a little watership down there. Before I go for a run on this somewhat overcast April evening, another thing I'd like to discuss. Partly one's vocal expressions. But also the question of why some people are very skilled and charming the way they speak, and other people are not. And some people do rather well for themselves, and other people do not. And Sam Vaknin has a theory on this, saying that we are run by what's the word he used? It wasn't imbecilocracy. It was something very similar, like idiotocracy almost. It was, and that people who vote, specifically addressing why Donald Trump came to power, although my own view on that is Donald Trump has his good points, and that although I do sometimes wonder why the Libertarians don't do better than getting 1 or 2% of the vote, or why they don't have, or even the Greens, or why they don't have a somewhat better selection of candidates. But we're in the habit of getting people who get on, who in a lot of areas of life who are not very good people. So why should politics be any exception? Politics is almost a synonymous with badly behaved, immoral anyway, isn't it? Disappointing. I'm not saying it should be. This is saying that what if we had to set the bar higher? It'd probably involve a sort of witch hunt whereby you have psychological profiles, where you have IQ testing, where people, even to vote, might have to sit and pass a civics test. Dystopias are often vulnerable to abuse, though, aren't they? Or utopia, when you change a system drastically. You might ask, though, what difference it would make considering the abuses in this sort of society, where egotism is sort of synonymous with narcissism, isn't it? It's almost, or alpha male or mojo, it's like a necessary evil. The bad people do the jobs we hate, the bad people do the jobs we'd rather not do. And some of them are richly rewarded as a result, suggesting that it's a lot easier to be a doctor, to become a doctor, if you don't have moral principles, because you can achieve a lot more in life by having very little contrition about what you deserve to achieve. Just as when we speak, maybe it's like it seems almost a wild thing. I sort of embarrassed myself in the shop the other day. I went, "See ya!" Like the tone, the pitch, everything just went, and that's quite notorious for people with Asperger's, to have different rhythm and stress and pitch on words. Although there are some very Asperger-like things that are not Asperger's, they may overlap a bit. Think about how people who flash back, it's the emotion centre of the brain is sort of severed from the thinking areas, and the two go in tandem. I mean, just that suggests, well, if you have a capacity for feeling guilt and shame from an early age, of being humiliated, embarrassed, of reflecting back on who you are, on having to think things through without projection, denial and dissociation, perhaps dissociation where you isolate yourself, but not dissociation from the facts, or through compulsive habits like drinking, say, or other so-called addictions, and I mean very frequent drinking, like certain members of my family have done, who are like a law unto themselves. You can never call them out on anything, and I'm sure they've been abused in some way, and it's resulted in a more narcissistic, either covertly or overtly, mainly overtly with some of them, but they're quite charming two. My dad's probably more covert than his brother, say, who is more overt, like a bit of a macho man. And doesn't work for the public sector like my dad, or my other uncle, or my mum, or her sister, who's a teacher, and married a successful man with more money even than she gets. Not a very nice man though. And to ask why people would want to do that and have no contrition or question of why they did that, and make everything sound like it's wonderful, it can only be a good thing. Teaching, of course, is one of those notorious subjects, or careers I should say, where it's those who can't who do it, and yet it may seem a modest career, but it's not as modest as somebody who's never had a career with a steady income, is it? Try having no income, then you might feel you have a lot to lose, or feel bitter that you never did. At least, I mean, it can be a tough job, challenging job, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't cover for your own flaws, your own mistakes, or shouldn't do. But people who get on, they crash the banks, don't they? They ruin the economy. They ruin people's lives. Their character disturbed. They have antisocial personality disorder / psychopathy, sociopathy. I can speak a bit, and or NPD, variations of NPD, histrionic, etc. I don't know where the histrionics fit in terms of success stories, but some of them get to have decent jobs in the public sector and in other areas of life. I know my mother did, and well, there are very strong traits of that. I don't know if it's a full-blown condition with her, with a bit of Asperger's, as I have said in previous videos. Where do I want to finish with this? Some people succeed, some people don't. For those of you with a more right-wing political bent, one of them, it's quite interesting who ends up working for the public sector and who has this capacity within them for self-pity, or wanting you to pity them. And you wonder what on earth they'd do if they didn't work in those jobs. And the sort of homes which are like a conveyor belt for people who work in those areas, parents who don't have as good education either themselves, my grandparents maybe, and where some sort of abuse has occurred. They're a bit simple-minded, my grandparents. But you couldn't tell them they were wrong, could you? So that's good. That was said, you mad. And to an extent it did. Or certainly the generation that preceded me. As someone has said previously, or a number of people have said, if anyone could ever identify what these problems were, these conditions, then it would solve a heck of a lot of things in an instant. Maybe a bit puzzled about how people would become soldiers, because a lot of people who are soldiers have been traumatised violently. And there's that sort of sign of a declining empire where nobody is warlike enough anymore. We're still pretty warlike, aren't we? But it's maybe not always. It gets a bit more vulnerable. Historically, that's what happens to empires when they get more frivolous, decadent, soft. It's a doubt, but I think children should be brought up in a gentle way, with boundaries, but in a gentle way. I can't quite remember what the main point or last point I wanted to finish with there is, but there was another one in the back of my mind, or hovering around in my mental brief, that a lot of things in life seem rigged. A lot of success stories seem rather rigged to me, or dishonest at least. Particularly the case in show business, which is another thing I wanted to do as a sort of, maybe I'm a bit of a productive narcissist there, wanting to make a difference, wanting to be the centre of attention. Don't know if I will quite manage to be a celebrity now though, but all the things I've never managed to get, relationship, success. I've got a book out on the internet, but that's not going to be promoted, is it, anytime soon? You don't know what's around the corner, but you know it hasn't been for about nearly most of the year. I've got a couple of books out actually, 2 or 3 or 4 books on Kindle, if you like short stories and poetry. Curious about what mine is. Anyway, like when the sort of aloofness of people and the regional differences between people, they're friendlier up north, or they're friendlier, I'm not sure they are to be honest with you, or they're friendlier when they don't occupy and a rather lofty social status. And a lot of hipsters, if you like, these days, well, that's the style of things now, isn't it, when everyone doesn't really have a class. Oh yes, they went to a posh school, they got hundreds of thousands coming from auntie in their inheritance, but no, they're not really upper middle class. A few people, no matter what region they're from, and I sadly do not number amongst them.